Hey, modern math teacher, Kristen Moore here. Welcome to today's episode. What if the key to better engagement, deeper understanding, and smoother classroom management wasn't about more creative content, but really just creating a better rhythm? Okay. I'm talking about something that is simple, repeatable, and honestly, kind of magical, right? It's starting strong and looping back. Okay. It's the one shift that completely changed the way that I teach. And that's what we're here to talk about in today's episode of Poolside PD, creating a simple rhythm you can rinse and repeat in your classroom to boost engagement with ease. Are you ready for it? Let's do this. Okay. So, first of all, let's talk about why rhythm is better than just more stuff. So, when I first started teaching, I was solo and I spent so much time planning activities, right? What can I have my students do? How can I master these 10 or how can I maximize this 10-minute chunk of time? What can I do for this 20 minutes of time? How can I fill a full 60 minutes or a full 85 minutes? With different activities to keep my students up, active, and engaged, right? But I eventually realized it wasn't about having more activities. It was about setting a rhythm that my students and I could rely on. And that rhythm starts at the unit level and then at the lesson level. Once I got this rhythm in place, I was able to use it over and over again. And it gave my students and I that sense of comfortability with we know what's happening and we know that we're always going to keep connecting back. When your students know what to expect, and when you design your instruction with something that they care about, they're going to show up differently. And that's why I want to talk to you guys about my favorite thing, starting every unit with an anchor activity. Anchor activities go way back, I think, to episode 5 in this podcast. So I'm going to make sure that I link that there because the original episode is for sure one that you definitely want to nail. But let's refresh ourselves. What the heck is an anchor activity? So, just like when I launch projects, I want to launch every unit with an anchor activity. This is going to be something that is real, something fun, something we can come back to over and over again, right? We're going to have that strong start, this anchor activity, and we are going to loop ourselves back to it, continuously connecting. So, that could look like something like flying paper airplanes or launching paper rockets if I'm talking about quadratic motion. It could be the kendama, right? I know I've definitely mentioned that in episode 5, the kendama, where you toss the ball up into the air. Okay, so it could be a kendama where you're talking about the shape of the motion, or it can be, as fun as the going viral project where we did like high fives and glow germ powder for the spread of exponential disease. You can do these kinds of activities to launch any unit. It doesn't have to just be a project based unit that you're launching with an anchor activity. This is something that is going to be grounding and connected to your students that you can continue to use over and over and over again all throughout the unit to keep them engaged. Okay. These are not just gimmicks, they are reference points that we can use throughout the unit. And the more the students connect to the context, the deeper their understanding is going to get. So every time I reference that anchor activity, it makes it sticky. The students remember the why, and that gives the math some purpose. Now, that is at the unit level. But let's talk. How can I have this same kind of experience at the lesson level? Because you only launch a unit, once every couple of weeks, 8 to 12 times a year, depending on how many units you've got. Okay. We want to also think about how we can start each of our lessons strong with another common reference point for us. So I want you to start each lesson with a real warm up. Every day, I start my class with a warm up problem, and I don't want it to just be any warm up. I'm really intentional about using that opening moment to set the tone for learning, to set the tone for what it is that we are going to be doing throughout that day. Sometimes it's a skill refresher. Sometimes it's a quick connection to the real world or a project. And sometimes it's a short video or data set that just kind of gets my students talking about the math. Why do I include this kind of a warm up? Because a strong start to a lesson, just like a strong start to a unit, is going to help keep that thread going throughout the day. It gives us a connection point that we can build back on over and over again. It's like planting a flag at the start of the day. Everything else is going to point back to it. It becomes my anchor activity for the day. So all throughout the lesson, I can go back and reference this is just like in our warm up when we talked about this, or this is just like in the anchor activity, in our launch activity, where we learned about that. Okay. So I want you to think about what can you do to have a strong start to your unit and what can you do to have a strong start to each lesson. Again, it's starting strong and looping back. So those anchor activities for the entire unit and those really rich warm-ups or mini anchor activities to start your class. Now, a lot of times what teachers get wrong about structure, they think that routines are just boring, right? Routines equals boring for you and your students, monotonous. But if you have a consistent rhythm, instead of thinking of it as just like a structure that you have to follow every day, it's a rhythm, it's a routine for you. You're actually going to free up energy for creativity and connection because you know that every lesson is going to start the same way. Whatever you put into that warm up is what it is, but it's always going to start with that activity that you are going to thread back into all throughout. Okay. So again, this is not about scripting every moment of your day. It's about knowing where you're going and why, and giving you and your students a really strong start to that at the beginning of your unit and at the beginning of the lesson. When kids know that there's this rhythm, that they're going to really need that warm up because that's going to be their reference point all throughout the rest of the day, they're going to lean in faster. And when you know your rhythm, you're going to feel a lot less overwhelmed because you know anytime you want to make a teaching point throughout that lesson, connect it back to the real world opener or connect it back to the anchor activity from the unit. So I want you guys to try this. Think about the next unit you're going to plan. It's probably one for next year, if you're already on summer break like me. So, what is an anchor activity that you could use to launch it? It doesn't have to be complicated, it just has to be memorable and connected. And remember, if you want to hear all about anchor activities, I'm going to link that episode. I think it's episode 5, again, in the show notes below. Next, once you've thought about that next unit and you've thought about that anchor activity, I want you to think in your mind, how can you rework your warm up routine? Can your warm ups for that be something that ties into the bigger idea or brings the project or the anchor activity back into focus? What's a really strong start you could do for the different lessons you teach in that unit? And as a bonus, pay attention this week. Where can you loop back to that anchor activity to keep the learning alive? Always think about, how can I loop back to this? When I did quadratics with my students the first year when I introduced the kendama to them, because that was their favorite play toy in my junior level classroom, it was magical. Every time I had to talk about the maximum or the vertex, or we were talking about where it was going increasing or decreasing, we went back to that activity. We talked about it. What was happening to the kendama ball when we saw it increase? Oh, that's when when it's leaving the ball, when you've thrown it up for the first time, and then it reaches the vertex, the maximum, and then it decreases, right? So we got to use that vocab over and over again, referencing back to that anchor activity. Okay. All right, you guys, if you need some help with this, inside the Modern Math Teacher membership, which is relaunching this fall, I'm going to walk you through how to build your own anchor activities from scratch. Plus, I'm going to give you access to warm up routines and real world prompts that you can plug into your lessons. Remember, rhythm doesn't just happen, okay? But once you build it, it sustains you, and I'm here to help you with that. So if you want help designing your anchor activity or creating warm ups that actually matter, join the waitlist for the Modern Math Teacher membership at the link in our show notes. We'll build that rhythm together. All right, you guys, that's it for this poolside PD. Until next time, keep rethinking your rhythm, keep thinking about your routines, and as always, keep it real. I'll catch you in the next episode.